the recording. And here we are. Hi, everybody. Welcome to our Thursday book celebration. I'm Malika Albrecht. I'm the founding editor of Redheaded Stepchild. And tonight we are celebrating a human being, a poet, an amazing person who has mentored so many, and who I owe a debt of gratitude to, Scott Owens. He is the author of 24 published books, with 25th and 26th nearby, just to let you know. And I'm always in awe of the quality and the range of his voice, and just how much he writes. But that's someone who is passionate about the work. His latest book that we're celebrating tonight is Elemental. It's out by Red Hawk Press. And I do want to say he also has other books, like children's books, and he has collaborations, for example, with Pris Campbell, which I love, Norman, photographer Clayton Joe Young, and artist Missy Cleveland. His work has received awards from Academy of American Poets, the Pushcart Prize Anthology, the North Carolina Poetry Society, of course, the Poetry Society of South Carolina, the North Carolina Writers Network, the Poetry Council of North Carolina, and the Next Generation Indie Book Awards. He was the editor of Wild Goose Poetry Review, if any of y'all remember, that was one of my favorite publications to go to, and 234, author a monthly column on poetry, a writer of reviews, a diligent writer of reviews, and a professor of English at Lenoir Rhyne University. He has been featured on the Writer's Almanac 6 times. I bet you it's more now. Is it more than 6, Scott, now?
No. 6 is good.
It's a beautiful number. And his articles about poetry have been featured in the Poets Market for 5 years. His work is archived in the South Carolina Poetry Collection at Furman University. Born in Greenwood, South Carolina, he lives in Hickory, North Carolina, and we are lucky that he came to North Carolina. Scott, my poetry brother, welcome, and thank you for letting us celebrate.
Oh, thank you. How long should I read? Or do you just want to
20 minutes, and we may ask for more.
Okay. 20 minutes sounds good then.
Perfect.
So this is the children's book, the newest children's book. I became a grandfather back in October. Well, a year ago, almost a year ago now. And I was explaining that I think, as happens with a lot of families, we spent pretty much the first 3 weeks hanging out together, everyone taking turns holding the baby, and the baby's name is Holden. So holding Holden just seemed like a natural title for a poem. So I started working on the poem, and didn't take too long to actually get the poem down, but then I knew that I needed illustrations, and that was the more complicated part of the process. I eventually connected with a graphic artist out in Colorado named Fieli Matthias, who his work I had seen on some other children's book, and I just loved his work, and I was very happy that he was willing to work with me, and I was very pleased with the results. And I'll just kind of hold up. You can see they're mostly from photographs, and we didn't have photos, or I didn't have photos of every member of the family holding Holden, so we had to get creative sometimes and introduce the baby, if you will. But I'll read the poem. We did, I should say, we did just 100 copies, and each one is signed and numbered. It wasn't really my intention to sell copies. It was more, I figured I certainly know 20 or 30 people who would want a copy, and I wanted to make sure they got copies. And then as I started giving them out, I kept having people who did want to buy one. So we went from initially just 50 copies to 100, and we stopped there. But I was very surprised and pleased that people outside of the family wanted a copy as well. Holding Holden. The doctor was the first, and then the nurse, who handed Holden to Mama for Holden. Then Daddy was next, a little perplexed. Then one grandma, and then the other, holding Holden like a loaf of bread, hands carefully cradling his little head. Next in line was Grandpa Bob and Grandma Ellen, who was holding Holden when he showed off his yelling. And there is an appropriate picture. That one does come from a photo. Uncle Keegan stepped in and made him grin. Then Aunt Hannah, as careful as could be, before handing him to me, his papa, all blubbering in tears. Then Aunt Sawyer, the youngest, but having no fears, as she had held others for many years. Then Aunt Debbie held Holden, a moment stolen, staring into his eyes as if they were golden. Uncle Richard said no, but made sure everyone knew exactly what to do when they were holding Holden. Emboldened, even great grandpa took a turn at Holden, thinking it best to take care and sit safe in his chair while hugging him close to his chest. Aunt Susie, Miss Myra, Aunt Tricia, the other Uncle Richard, Uncle Danny, and Aunt Wendy, there were certainly plenty. So many hands folding around him, so many chests and shoulders, so many to hold him as Holden grows older. Through good times and bad times, they'll hold him when they're needed, but they all know that sometimes Holden will feel completed just to hold himself. So there's that one. And then the other book that Malika mentioned, Elemental. This was a lot of fun to write. And really, I probably have been working on some of these poems for the better part of 20 years. In fact, let's see. No, I want to save that for just a little bit. Let me read a couple of others and then I'll tell you a story about a 20-year-old poem that only got finished when I started this book. So I'll come back to that. Let me start instead with this one. Because while the poems are all about nature, as frequently happens with poetry, they quite often are about other things as well. And I read this poem earlier this week. Where was I? I'm sorry, I did a reading earlier this week and now I don't remember where I was. As I read this poem, I started to tear up a little and I had to explain to people in the audience how the poem is not just about where it starts, but about something else as well. And I was also explaining to them how, for whatever reason, this book seemed to give me an opportunity to explore, as Malika was saying, a lot of different forms, genres, styles, if you will. I think as I get older, whatever beliefs I had been given, whatever rules I had been given about what a poem should be like, I've gotten much more comfortable at setting those aside and writing whatever form or whatever style either I or the poem choose. So anyway, this is a poem of, I don't know how many lines, probably 25 or 26. And yet I call it a sonnet variation because it has that wonderful balance that a sonnet has of 2/3 kind of introduction, setting up the issue, and then a turn, and then the final third resolving it. And in this case, there's not really a resolution. The turn is a shift more towards the conceit, away from description of what was going on into the conceit. And I'm talking way too much about it instead of reading it. So this is interwoven, and I think it's definitely self-explanatory early on, and then I'll probably mention some clarifying statement at the end. Interwoven. In the backyard of the new house, in an area 300 feet square, where I want to plant rhododendron, Japanese maple, Lady Jane magnolia, I find a network of vines that boggles the mind. Blackberry and vinca, greenbrier and wisteria, honeysuckle and grape, and many I cannot name. Planted or let grow by someone grown tired of gardening, some traveling 20 feet across the ground, even further beneath the surface in search of a tree or wall or fence to climb, anything vertical in their vegetative mind. Pulling one reveals a dozen more layered on top of each other like some multi-headed hydra, unending, insidious as shame, guilt, a sense of unworth, woven together to form an almost immovable fabric. I pull vines with a passion I don't completely understand for hours at a time, days in a row, and weeks later still feel I've gained so little ground and only found an unsought secret to how unwanted things last. Um, so I mean, quite literally, we moved into this house 2 years ago now, and 1/3 of the yard, it's a small yard, but 1/3 of the yard was a jungle. And as I started trying to clean it up so that I could do something with it, I discovered these vines that I'm writing about. And I'm back there in the yard and I'm working and I'm covered in sweat. And I've been doing this for some time. And I suddenly start crying and I realize that what I'm seeing before me is a metaphor for childhood trauma. And that's where my mind goes. And I just sit down and I try to write a description of what I've been doing and try to somehow capture the suggestion of what was beneath the surface, if you will. And so it's one of the things I tell my students is focus on, pay attention to your attention, focus on wherever your attention goes and write about it, because you don't always understand everything that you're writing about when you dig into these details, and sometimes they only become clear um, sometimes even after you finish the poem, sometimes weeks, months, years later. So we'll start with that. Let's see. I guess I'll do this one. This is a simple one, but as you can see in the book, I've revised it since I wrote it. And that's another thing that I tell my students is, in fact, someone asked me very recently, this is an interview. Why can I not recall who was asking me these questions? Oh, it was at a local a school down in Lincolnton, not far from here. And one of the questions that the students asked me was, when do you know that a poem is done? And my answer was, it's never done, not until you die. And I pulled this book out and said, see, this one's been published twice now, and I'm still changing it. Pretty straightforward, difference of opinion. There are a lot of what I would call sonnet variations in the book. Most of them are 14 lines. The one that I just read, not 14 lines, but still I would consider it a sonnet variation. Difference of opinion. The Sunday morning walker, seeing me on my knees again, says, "Good morning." And then, meaning to empathize with hard work, arthritic hands, aching backs and knees, remarks, "It never ends, does it?" Meaning the pulling of weeds, gathering of leaves, replacement of violets with creeping time. I understand her good intentions, but see it differently, and so reply, "I guess it never does. Thank goodness for that. What would I do if it did?" And that's kind of my approach to life. I'm not really looking for anything to end. So um, I know some of you that are tuned in are associated with the mountains. And so I'm going to read How to Know the Mountain. And the backstory of this one is, we were traveling up in the Fosco, North Carolina area, and we had gone somewhere that I wasn't familiar with. And we had been going for quite some time and really had no idea where we were. And then we came around a curve, and there in front of me, I could see Grandfather Mountain. And then a little bit further, I could see Table Rock. And it just occurred to me, well, the poem begins with what occurred to me. How to know the mountain. You get to know a mountain first by the shape of the mountain, each with its own unique profile. I'd know the mountains around me no matter where I thought I might be. Baker's, Grandfather, Table Rock, Crowder's, High Brighton, Pilot. Sometimes the mountain is named after its shape. Pickens Nose, Caesar's Head, Craggy Dome, Three Top, Hanging Rock, Humpback. Sometimes after appearance, White Side, Sawtooth, Shining Rock, Brushy, Flat Top, Grassy Ridge, Bald. Sometimes after what the mountain contains, Hemlock, Chestnut, Sassafras, Licklog, Chinkapin, Huckleberry Knob. But there's no knowing a mountain until you've actually been on it, until you've hiked it, climbed it, breathed its air, listened to what it has to say, until you've learned just what the mountain can do to you. Jump off, gallbuster, ripshin. I love the idea of a mountain called Ripshin. I've been a hiker for most of my life. That's appealing. You know, I want to go see what a mountain called Ripshin can do to me. All right. Now I'm torn because I have too many that I want to read. So this is one that I started to talk about at the very beginning. I wrote most of this poem more than 20 years ago. When I was younger, I did an awful lot of solo hiking and solo camping, which was always, I was going to say the only way I really wanted to camp, but that's not entirely true. It was just my favorite way to go camping. I would grab just the essentials after school and on a Friday, head up into the mountains. I would have scouted out some idea of trails, and then I would get on the trails, hike for anywhere from 3 to 7 miles, depending on just how much it was. And then when it was starting to get dark, set up camp and hang out for a couple of nights, and then head back. And I loved it, and it was also terrifying at the same time. And maybe that was part of why I loved it, was how terrifying it was. But I was never quite happy with the poem, and then I forgot about it, and it just kind of vanished. And it was not until I wrote another poem for this book, and I've been a little bit fascinated lately with how our memory works. Just a quick side note. Recently, I was working in the backyard, and I was pulling up these little saplings that I didn't recognize what they were, and I figured I didn't want them, and there seemed to be way too many of them in this area. But as I was pulling them up, I got the smell in my nose that immediately took me back 50 years to the smell of a tree surrounded by a bunch of other little trees on my grandmother's farm. And the smell brought, not just reminded me of that smell, but reminded me of what she called it. And she called it her glory tree. And it was a glory bower. I say Karen must know what glory bowers are. I and it's just anyway, I find it strange. So writing this other poem for the book took me back, reminded me of this poem that I had written 25 years earlier, but never finished. And I do something in this poem that I do also in the new poem. So I'll go from this poem to the new poem and see if anyone notices what I do. And it's actually a rule that one of the many, I tell my students on the first day of class that there are no rules in poetry, and then I spend the rest of the semester, well, maybe the first half, telling them what the rules are, and then challenging them to successfully break the rules. And they always do, which is fantastic. This is Night in the Forest. You hear every twig snap, every leaf flutter, every strange, unknowable animal sound. Looking, your eyes widen, find bits of light to hold on to, see shadows move from shadows and the slightest breath of wind. You smell animal musk, taste it in the air, feel the hair on your arms, the back of your neck rise as you're certain something comes closer. Every sense is filled to overflowing. And yet, amidst the unease, the urge to panic, there is also, in moments of stillness, a calm, a sense of peace, of no obligation, no schedule to attend. You only ever feel here, in the still, in the quiet, in the dark. And then this is the poem that when I wrote it, took me back to that poem, because I do the same thing, breaking one of my own rules. And quick backstory to this one. Do I need a backstory? Not exactly, but this is part of the paying attention that I encourage my students to do. I found myself with time to waste out in the country in the middle of nowhere, and there was a little church, and I thought, well, I'll just sit over here and just take a little rest before I complete the task that I was too early for. And where I was parked, I could look into this little country church cemetery and started noticing the headstones and just kind of paid attention to my attention. And this is what it led to. At Ivy Memorial Cemetery, Maiden, North Carolina. How many names should a cemetery have? From here I count 2 Longs, 2 Gladdens, 2 Fowlers, 2 Dills, 2 Loftons, 6 Drums, 6 Ballards, and 15 Goodsons. A solitary Poe, Whiteside, Lawing, Henry, and Keever. Is that too many? Too few? Too unbalanced? A little more than a family plot, but I've seen smaller and much larger too. Is there a right number? Is there such a thing as cemetery etiquette? If so, I'm sure we broke the rules as kids playing baseball in the cemetery in Matthews Mill Village. 1 headstone, the backstop, a footstone for each base. And at night, there was the irreverence of ghosts in the graveyard in the actual graveyard. I remember the cemetery at the Chapel of Rest in Patterson, North Carolina. Most of the headstones worn blank, names and dates, last words and epitaphs silenced, lost to rain and weather. Even the angels had lost their faces. And I've trembled at rows upon rows of identical headstones or crosses in unimaginable numbers in straight lines from every angle at Arlington and Normandy. I drive through Oakwood Cemetery where I taught my boys to drive each day after class to avoid the slowdown at Oakwood Elementary School. I hope to avoid cemeteries when I die. Not dying, of course. I understand the inevitability of that. Just the prolonged permanence of death in a sealed box, underground, in a place like a cemetery. So both poems end with stacked prepositional phrases. And I always tell my students, you never really want more than 2 prepositional phrases in a row. But this one has 4 and the previous one has 3 at the end of the poem. And I do have one poem, I'm not going to read it, but and many of you know my first sort of selected works was called Prepositional because I love prepositions. And one of the poems in there has 10 consecutive prepositional phrases. So I really broke my own rule then. And the next 2 I'm going to read, one from the book and then one of the new ones. Became relevant last week. Well, let me poem first, and then I'll explain with the next one. The poem is called "I Intend to Die," and the title is the first line as well. I intend to die on my feet, looking at something beautiful or interesting or new, but not anytime in the near future, mind you. In fact, if I could live forever, I would, but only if I could maintain enough vitality to hike at least the easy trails, enough cognition to appreciate what I could see, birds and trees, the freshness of youth, a new idea, a new connection, any new thing that matters. I intend to die on my feet, unless, of course, I happen to be on my knees planting another tree when my time comes to cease to be. So, and I won't remember the context behind this, but the other day in class, oh yeah, actually, I'm sorry, I do. I have a student who is studying forensic pathology, and she had to go observe a autopsy. And she wrote a poem about it, and it was a good poem, which she kind of creatively imagined the life of the person that was being autopsied. I don't know what the proper verb is. And the rest of my class got a little freaked out by the whole concept, and they were all talking about how they didn't want to be cut open after they died and all this. And I blurted out that I didn't want to be cut open by a person, that I would much rather be eviscerated by a bear. And they just thought that was the most hilarious thing they had ever heard. And they talked about it for quite some time. So of course I came home and wrote a poem about it called Keeping Things Wild. When I know it's over, I'd like to be allowed to walk out in some place like Cades Cove, Alligator River, the road to nowhere, a solo one-way hike into deepest woods that ends with no regrets when I finally have to lie down, let the wolves find me, or the bear. Even then, I think, though I would know it was what I wanted, what I asked for, I might like to fight back a little at the end, let them keep their wildness a bit longer. And so the rest of the story is today in class, I gave them their new writing prompt, and it was to write their own death fantasy. So well, it should be interesting to see what I get from that. So a couple of other very new poems about things that I just love, things that are still happening that I like a lot. This is another one where the title is the first line of the poem. At 62, I rise at 4 to read my students' writing. In the kitchen, by the light of the refrigerator, I pour cold coffee into a glass, then cream. Walking quietly to the bathroom, I step over the motionless puddle of dog spread out across the hallway, then back to the chair and the light of the computer screen. 5 weeks in, they begin to find their eyes, their voices, their styles, the subject matter they really want to explore. Each new page I look at makes me laugh, think, visualize, sometimes, even now, 40 years after I started teaching, cry. There is little more gratifying than mornings like this. So I think every semester, my students, and it's probably 5 or 6 weeks in, they're like a sonnet, they hit that turn, they finally start getting it. And it's just very gratifying to me when that happens. It's probably what keeps me teaching. And so that was a little bit of an obeyed, I guess, because it's 4 a.m. That's definitely morning. This one is titled Obeyed with Wife and Dogs. In the cool of the morning, in the half dark before sunrise, as light begins to silhouette the trees, my wife and I sit on our back porch with our 2 dogs, listening to rhythmic insect hum, chatting about the day to come. It's nothing deeply meaningful, mostly managing schedules while sipping coffee, prioritizing tasks, but also reflecting on choices we make and how we continue to move forward. It has become my favorite time of day. I'm distracted now by a mosquito that has found its way into my room, and I think I just dispatched with them. Tell my students to pay attention, and I always try to pay attention myself. And around the beginning of this semester, this thing that I'm going to read about happened, and it gave me the perfect poem to use as an example of what can happen if you're paying attention. Quite literally, I was walking towards my front door and saw something in the grass to the right of the walk that seemed strange to be there. And I bent down and picked it up, and it was a piece of knotted string. I have no idea why it was there. I don't use a lot of string, but it was. So I just kind of paid attention to I don't and don't really know why I was fascinated with it, but I paid attention to my attention and kind of just let it unfold, if you will. And this is called Existential Knot, Knot. I picked up a knot from the ground today, not an important knot, not of significant size, not of any significance really, at least not initially. But then I realized if not for the knot, I likely would not have noticed it at all. In fact, the knot would have just been a string, not of any special size, not of any noticeable color, not anything special about it at all. But the fact that it was tied into a knot made it not exactly like every other unknotted expanse I'd seen. Of course, I thought about unknotting the knot, but ultimately decided not to, as the knottiness was exactly what made it exactly what it was and continues to be. A knot, not like any other, ensured by its knottiness not to be left unnoticed. How am I doing on time? One
You're
or two?
doing perfectly. Keep going.
Okay.
Oh,
Uh,
so good.
I do another rule I tell my students is never read your newest poem. And yet at every reading I give, I always read my newest poem. I can't help myself. And I think it's as much as anything, I'm still in the revising mode. So I want to read it out loud, and then look at people's faces and see, did that work? Did it not work? Did I hear anything that I know I want to change? So this is one that I wrote this morning, actually. Um, it's called A Place of One's Own. I had a place when I was young. Almost anywhere we moved, I'd find one. At my grandfather's farm, where I spent most summers, it was deep in the woods, just past an embankment behind a wall of deadfall that made it invisible to all coming down from the house. It curved upwards so I could lean into it and look ahead into sunlight peeking through pine trees. When my daughter was young, she had one beneath the branches of an overgrown forsythia bush in the back corner of the yard. She could be invisible there and work out her worries and cares on her own. And my son, when he was 9 and 10 and needed to be alone, would push his way through tall grasses above the creek bed, then down a hill that left him completely out of sight, next to water, only sun shining through to keep him company. I worry for those who haven't found a place. I can't help but think the world would be a better place if everyone had one of his own. So, we'll see. Um, True story. Poem definitely explains itself, so no backstory here. It's called Office. An old friend, a good writer, author of 12 collections of poetry, comes into my coffee shop and asks to speak to me on the side. He wonders if I have ever reached a point where I couldn't write. I tell him, sure, we all do. And after a couple of weeks, the panic sets in and we fear what we've done is all we'll ever do. But then something happens and it starts again. He says, yes, but I haven't written anything in a year and a half. I don't see anything worth writing about. And when I do get something down, it never seems any good. I tell him, writing is a way of seeing, and it sounds like you've been wearing blinders. I ask him, whoever said it had to be good? I tell him, go someplace new with no agenda but to write what you see. I tell him, start with any stupid prompt like 3 men walk into a bar. What happens next? I tell him what he has forgotten. There is so much to write about every day that you can never finish your job. When he leaves, I go in the back and sit in the black wooden chair between the number 10 cans of tomatoes, the gallons of olive oil, the cases of industrial size trash bags, and pull out the box top I sometimes use for a desk and write this poem with gratitude for having something to write. All right, how about one more? Is that good? Okay. Um, Another true story, and again, I don't think it needs a backstory, so I'll just launch into it. This is called Distractions. No, I will. There's a little bit of a backstory. I lied. One of the things that I tell my students, if they develop the habit of paying attention, they'll notice a lot more. They'll be happier because the whole world seems more rich to them. There's so much more in it. And they'll also start to notice how serendipitous things are, how one thing reminds you of something else. And so that's kind of what this poem embodies. And it was definitely true. The three things that I write about here all came to be in very quick succession. And I don't think if I wasn't, good at paying attention, I would have noticed that these things were related, distractions. My friend tells me she gets distracted by clouds. As one who is frequently accused of being distracted by birds, I don't think clouds are such a bad thing to pay attention to. My 10-month-old grandson is distracted by screens, cell phones, televisions, perhaps because it's what distracts us from him, or because he already understands it's the one thing we deny him. This morning, as I returned from taking 10 minutes, apparently too long, to take out the trash because I stopped to pull the crabgrass coming up through cracks in the driveway, my wife told me the reason we always struggle to get everything done is that I'm too often distracted by weeds. And then she threw in, for argument's sake, and poetry. But what makes something a distraction? Is it as simple as what we attend to when others want us attending to something else? Or maybe to them? Literally, it's that which drags apart, draws away, impedes traction. Towards what? A goal, duty, responsibility? But aren't some distractions worth more than what they distract us from? And some distractions better than others? Surely poetry and clouds and birds are better than bright, shiny objects, social media, or squirrels. The world is simply full of things worthy of distraction, things worth writing about. Our job is to notice them and then start writing. All right.
Oh, Scott, I'm reclaiming distractions. Y'all can unmute and we can just spend a moment saying thank you. That was I love that you read a brand new poem too.
I
And
always
that
do. I can't help myself.
I think that reminds us um the passion that we have, and we do that a lot in open mic. People read, fresh ink. I call it that new poem smell. It just makes me thrilled. I don't know why this didn't strike me before, Scott, because I certainly knew this about you, but I was thinking you are such an excellent student and teacher of presence, of being present and paying attention. And it is beautiful to have recognized that because it resonated in all the work. Just this voice, there's something so compelling to me about your poems, not just the musicality, not just the gorgeous imagery and the amazing language and the way the words talk to each other, but there's a quiet stillness in them that I feel like I can rest in, that I really enjoyed this time. So I just want to say thank you. I don't know how you do it, but it to me that was lovely.
Thank,
Yes, Cindy.
Oh, I can listen to Scott all night. I still don't know where I know you from, but I do. I mentioned it to Bob. I said I think I know him, but but I'm definitely gonna buy some of your books, and
I was gonna say you're a new fan. You're a fan. You're in. I could
stuff.
see it.
That stuff is right up my alley.
well,
Line
thank you. I appreciate that.
parodies, yeah.
So Karen, when he was reading that one poem with the joyful play of language, I thought of you.
I I'm just my face hurts from smiling so much. That was the most delightful musical poetry. Oh my great goodness. Thank you so much for writing those poems and sharing them so beautifully.
Thank
And
you.
I did not know what the tree was. I love the name of it so much I about lost my mind.
It's a beautiful tree, but it is very invasive is the only word for it. It's kind
Ah,
of like the what is it is it white mulberry or yellow mulberry that they come up, if you have one you're going to have 100
uh,
next year.
yeah.
Glory bowers are kind of like that, but the flowers are amazing, and the smell, I would recognize the smell anywhere, but to put a name to it, it's a little bit like peanut butter, I think. And I don't know
Oh,
any other tree that smells anything like peanut butter, but
I had peanut butter just like an hour.
The powerful thing about memory is olfactory is directly, in that reptile part of our brain, which is why it evokes such powerful
yeah.
memories, even, well after things may not be working as well with recall. Smell can bring it back. And so it's pretty remarkable.
well, I've had that experience where it was a smell that would have been 50 years old. And then I had very recently a sound that it was so well, I'm looking for the word. It seemed so much like something that I had heard before that I was weeding in the garden, and I heard leaves being blown across the street, and it sounded so much like bicycle tires. And for whatever reason, my mind went back to specific bicycle tires on a specific street that would have been more than 50 years ago. And I could even see it was Chuck Davis riding the tire or riding the bicycle.
That's amazing because
I
I don't
understand.
think of sound as being that singular or particular, like leaves, but there must have been a recreation of something to evoke such a vivid recollection. That's
I think I'm probably just going crazy, but
I think I think it's a poet's superpower.
maybe
I
so.
think I think so. It's one of your many superpowers, Scott.
Yeah. Do people have questions for Scott about his process or about any of the poems that he read? About what's
I'm trying
the
to scroll
upcoming
down
book?
through all these comments.
Oh, I'm gonna send them to you, Scott, because
Okay,
there's
all
no
right.
way you could keep. I don't want you to have to worry about that. I'll send you the whole lump sum because we're big on comments. You'll have fun reading them over, and you'll see which lines hit several of us at the same exact time. There were several that were just like all of us went, "Wow, wish I'd written that."
Been doing that a lot with my students lately. They keep coming up with really good, if not the entire poem good, definitely good lines, sometimes good stanzas, and some of them are they just amaze me. So
Well, that's why Pat wrote, every poet should have you as a teacher, because I think that your deep reverence for poetry really allows people to express themselves. I think that would be such a great, as remembering how it was as a young poet, there were some teachers that you went to and you thought, oh, that's amazing. I feel lit on fire. There are others that you felt like basically she just had water just dampened, just like I'll never write again.
yeah,
And you would have been one of the ones that passed the flame, that passed the torch and said, um, break
well
the
that
rules. Here are the, yeah,
during
go
that
ahead.
visit during that visit to the school in Lincolnton early this week, another question that came up, and I don't remember exactly how it came. I think I must have been acting excited animatedly, and one of them said, one of the students said, you really seem to like teaching, and you just told us you've been doing this for 40 years. And they wanted to know what it was I liked so much about teaching poetry. And I said, well, I'll be honest with you. I have not liked a lot of my poetry teachers because I always feel like they have a relatively narrow sense of a poetic aesthetic, and they spend a great deal of time sharpening their own poetic aesthetic on their students and saying, don't do that. You can't do it this way. And I've always tried to be very open-minded. So I try to read widely rather than finding a handful of favorites and just focusing on them. And I try to see the value in any approach. And I said, and that allows me to constantly enjoy poetry because I just appreciate whatever it is you're trying to do. And my goal is always to try to help you do whatever it is you're trying to do a little better. It's not to make you write like me. I don't even know what I write like. So
You're right, great.
thank you.
You ever give a workshop, I'm joining that.
Right?
Yes.
I
I
have a
hope everybody wrote
question.
down my death fantasy as their writing prompt for later on today. I did. Who had a question?
I have
Karen?
a question.
Oh,
It has
yep.
nothing at all to do with his poetry. It has to do with the painting behind his head.
Oh,
And I'm wondering if you could show the whole thing and if there's
yeah.
a story about it.
So I mentioned how do
Thank
I
you.
there we go.
Oh, I like that.
Yeah.
I mentioned Missy Cleveland, who's a local artist who did the illustrations for my first book of poems for children. That's one of hers. We have probably 7 or 8 of hers in the house, and I love her sense of play and her sense of color. I thought she was the perfect artist. In fact, I have had poems for children for decades, and I've taught a workshop, a poetry writing workshop to 6, 7, and 8-year-olds in a local school. And I always wanted to do a book of poems for children, but I knew that it needed to be illustrated, and I can't draw a straight line, much less anything that would work in a book for children. And we had her art up at the coffee shop, and one morning when I was going in at 4:30 to get the coffee shop ready, I had a new poem for children that was running through my head. And as I'm walking towards the register, my peripheral vision catches a glimpse of one of her paintings, and I realized that's it. That's what I need for that poem. And then I started looking at more for work and realizing, yeah, she's got like paintings that will work for almost every poem that I have. So that was an easy find. Finally, it just took a while.
It's good.
Glad you asked that question, Bob, because we wouldn't have gotten the backstory of the serendipity that brought them together.
Yeah.
It's very cool. Any other questions? I checked the chat section. I didn't think I missed anything. All right, guys. Scott, thank you so much. That was just everything I hoped for. Really moving.
Well, thank you.
I still am stuck with something about was thinking, how people will write a Ars Poetica, and I kind of feel like you are a living Ars Poetica, like how you approach the whole craft. I don't know how to put that in words, what I felt, but I felt very strongly that's what I was seeing in motion. Just
Well,
deep
the
respect.
next book, the one coming out in April, is all about poetry and writing. So maybe
Really?
yeah.
There we go. I feel like you're getting ready to tell us some like craft stuff. I'm gonna definitely be interested to hear more about that book, and we'll be inviting you back to celebrate that one.
Cool.
We'll just go ahead and have an annual date for whatever new books you have out.
Sounds good to me.
Awesome. We're heading towards open mic. I put everybody's name down. If you disagree, just tell me go away. Karen, we got you first.
Okie doke. All right, I'm ready. So, y'all, I have to tell you, I'm so excited. Tuesday, I had the opportunity to talk with my friend Angie Dribbin doing this YouTube thing that we're doing, where we're talking to creative people. And we talked to Grace Cavalieri. And if y'all don't know her work, she is the bomb. Anyway, it was delightful. And one of the things we do on our episodes is always pull an oracle or tarot card. So this is the one that I pulled, and it inspired a poem. So I'm gonna read that. And then when I was getting ready for tonight, I was like, well, that is just an insanely short poem. And then the one that I wrote after this about something we were talking with Grace about, I was like, oh, that's the other side of this poem. So I made it, it's one poem now. So anyway, this is the card that we were dealing with. I don't know, can y'all see that okay?
Oh, wow.
It's an oracle card, and it's called Lean Into the Storm. So, oh gosh, I just got big on my screen. Okay. So, yeah, it's a gal holding an umbrella, and the umbrella is actually a mountain of homes. So we talked about that briefly. And so here's my poem. That's now one poem, but it was two. Okay. When the dream song oracle advises, lean into the storm. I do, without question. Not true. I do with all questions, open-ended, none left or right or wrong. And my umbrella handle, firmly held, with its canopy granting my dreaming of hills teeming with all manner of houses, rising up as homes, illuminated by a fullness of moon, whose fullness of glow will be hatching soon. Grace knows. In the ocean of storms, poetry orbits, no ups or downs, no lefts or rights or wrongs, no nights or days, only infinity is open here. To the journeyings of light, to dreams not yet even dreamed, up or down, storms are fronts for knowing.
Beautiful.
I love that. And yes, I can't picture those separate.
Yeah, I like them as one. It's two. I was like, whatever.
Beautiful.
Anyway,
Yeah.
y'all, Grace Cavalieri, good gracious. Go online, check her out. She's amazing
Yeah.
and delightful.
But
Make
Lori,
sure
what, Maryland or
She is in let me see, I've got her bio right here. Where
what?
is she? She's in Maryland. She's the
Oh,
10th poet
she-
laureate, or she was. You guys, I just have to tell you because I thought this was amazing. She is 93 years old.
Yeah.
She's like a 20-year-old, and she still produces The Poet and the Poem for public radio. It's been on the air for 48 years.
Come on. Go ahead and put that link to the Great Good. Is the video up yet, or that still has to come up?
I am
Not
not
yet.
sure if it's up, but I'm
It's
gonna
up.
bet that
Can you?
Laura,
up.
Oh, is it?
is it up? Okay,
I
I'll see
watched
if I
it.
can find it while we're doing this. Oh,
Thank
you
you.
watched
Yeah,
it
if
already?
you
I
don't
watched
mind,
it.
that would be lovely so that people can clip it. Thank you,
Okay.
Karen. Chrissy,
All
you're
right,
next.
thanks.
Okay, can everybody hear me okay?
Yes, ma'am.
So I've been reading Layla Chati kind of obsessively every day for like 9 or 10 days now. So this came out of that. It's called All That Is Ardent Aches. And it's the first line of the poem. All that is ardent aches. In the syllables I am dreaming into being. The eggshells we are patting round. No, our worn yoke is a scrambled blessing meant to keep us moving forward until we intertwine, set to unpuzzle, all desire owning itself in the echo between an unfermented night and daybreak's promise. Thank you.
Fabulous extended metaphor. That was fun. Thank you, Chrissy. I have to also say, I love that you are talking about other poets who you connect to and are inspired by. I think that's really important to, talk about who moves us. Regina, I have you next.
Good evening, everyone. Scott, wonderful reading. And I'm so glad to see you well, because I think the last time I saw you on Redheaded, you had COVID. Was that right? I can't hear you.
Yeah, I've had 3 runs with it, so it definitely could have been.
Yeah, I remember that. So good to see you well, and it was a wonderful reading. Yes. So this poem is one that I haven't read in a while. I'm not sure if I've ever read it here, but I've not read it in a while. It's an old one, and it is entitled "Truth Is." And I want to think it came out of something Karen and I were working on. Maybe we were in a Zoom, and I pulled this this verse from a poem by James Laston, in Blueberries, and it says, I use it as an epigraph. Weigh your heart against the feather of truth, as the Egyptians did, and not purge its sin, but for your own sake, not your soul's. So, truth is. Truth is, there are truths on plains I have not explored, plains I know not of. My heart lives on 1, 2, 3, or more, and my feathered truths cannot be measured against the feather of another, Egyptian or otherwise, though they too had their fall and the rise of their truth bloomed and withered and bloomed and withered, and as with circumstance has come again, and one day will die. I've watched babies die, not just on TV. I held the child of a friend who took a tiny last breath and met her end in peace, and I could almost see God lift her, spirit her away, her exhale light, lifted like a feather. This is truth. God came for her, lifted her like a feather. Like a feather, I've watched babies die, often on TV, children whose mothers I did not know, dying in streets, begging for mercy. Black skins battered by rage and fear have violently watched their breath disappear. In cars, on sofas, in beds, on porches, calling and crying for help, or shot down before they could even utter or wheeze. I can't breathe. Breath is the truth of life, but what of death? Death is truth. and dead is not dead. I remember death and the solemn after truth, and my truths, and the truths of my sister, my brother, both others, is that there is no feather large enough to bear all truths. We have too many. We understand too few.
Damn, we have too many, we understand too few. I was trying to write something down. I was like, prophecy, prayer, witness, and then I just had to stop and listen. I just can't even double task. Thank you, Regina. And your grandpuppy's looking at you with pure adoration, by the way.
No, he look when he got to the end of Scott's reading, she was like, you're supposed to be sitting on the couch and we're supposed to be watching television. So
As it comes out. Maybe that's what it's okay. It wasn't adoration, it was exacerbation. Which was
like, what are you doing?
grandpuppies. Glenn, I have you next.
Okay. Yeah, Scott, a number of your poems reminded me of other things I had written. So I actually opened 5 different things that had similar feelings or experiences. And I teach economics and public policy. And there have been times where students surprised me and brought kind of tears to my eyes as well, seeing how well they did something. So I decided to go with a poem with wordplay, is the one I'm going to read. And so this one is called Unprecedented. For all intensive purposes, we are witnessing acts unprecedented in our history. Spokesmen and allies speak to non-German topics, turn Congress to a house of ill repute, deny threats they went nuclear for under previous precedents, like the ceiling of the 16th chapel or a jet stream of entrails glowing red across the sunset. I just can't stare my eyes away. Is the leader of the free world a man of great stature or a mere wolf in cheap clothing? The tweets, a diamond dozen, mute points and depreciating comments fade into Bolivian, eluding confidence as he suffers a nervous shakedown. Please tell me this is just a pigment of the imagination.
Glenn, that's so good. And how come I don't have this written down somewhere?
It's amazing, Glenn, at how close these words came to reality. I mean, it wasn't just
Taylor, the poet who did The Impotence of Proofreading. Anybody know that poem?
No.
Taylor, oh my God. Okay, I'll find that at some point because you have to watch this video. I will get that up there. Bob, I got you next.
I just say I'm a big fan of Brian Bilston, and he does a lot of poems where he does a lot of wordplay. And for this one, I wrote out like 100 lines of malapropisms before I started work on the poem.
I wondered, it was freaking beautiful. Bob, I have you next.
Okay. A short one, as usual. There was a circle with no diameter, a cube with no volume, a line that could not be measured. There was a man who was a bird that never learned how to speak.
Always that last line hits me in such a different way and spins the other lines before it in different directions. Thank you, Bob.
Thank you.
Laura?
If I unmute before I pull up my poem. This is an old one, but I like it. This is called For Wesley. I was the girl on the playground who spun you round, lifting you from the ground, your arms gripped in my hands until, released, you rose aloft. And for a moment, your heart lifted, ecstatic, like that top arc of the swing. Airborne and free you flew, a weightless bird, until the earth rose up to meet you.
Oh, that's gorgeous. And that, I love the musicality, and it was nice. Were you inspired by what Scott wrote to read this one, or had you already picked something out?
No,
Okay.
this was,
It felt like conversation back to, so thank you for that. I love when people choose a, like Glenn did, something that is in dialogue. Cindy?
Okay, I'm going to apologize in advance for this one, this short poem. But we've been talking about art and parody and rhymes, and I'm not known for writing ekphrastic poetry. Like Scott said, I can't draw a straight line. I do appreciate art, but I wrote this very snarky poem. And the irony is, I wrote one ekphrastic poem, and it's being excerpted in a scholarly, poetic Australian book that Cassandra Atherton from Lit Bomb is doing. So I'm addressing myself in this too. It's called Warning to Ekphrastic Poets. Explications of art better left unsaid, especially when the painter is dead. Oh, ekphrastic poet, what I'm trying to drive home is that Van Gogh, O'Keeffe, and Kahlo would have hated your poem.
Cindy, you always catch me off guard. That's beautiful. I love that. Thank you. Yeah, she did have us at the title, right, Karen? Just a reminder, as you read, please check the chat section because I don't want you to miss a response to your work. I have just two more poets, Pat and Cal. Pat first and then Cal.
Thank you. Scott, that really was a wonderful reading. You know I love those poems already. The new ones you read too. Thank you. This was terrific even. This one really doesn't talk to anybody, I guess, but it's a fairly new one. It's titled Why I Bought the Economy Size. Because she was not pretty, her overbite designed to rip prey, canines sharp as javelins, slight lisps, because she could stand to lose a few pounds, and wore a flowering floral and a gray cardigan strained across her chest, because she smiled when she talked, her voice soft as a mother soothing a fussy child, because she suggested the best bargain but did not insist, just gently opened the jar, opened it like a sacrament, invited me to dip my finger into the cool face cream, gently imploring, try it. Because I needed moisturizer and she needed that job, I bought the large size. Thanked her for the free gift, samples wrapped in tissue paper and tucked inside a pink pouch, the color of her dress.
Fabulous. I love the repetition of that, because that was fabulous. I like how it built up. Cal, I have you last.
Okay. Let me see here. I have what I think is another poem influenced by Jack Kerouac, who I don't know if it's the same one I read. I know I read one at this, or something reminded me of it at this group because Malika gave me the name of a very good song by Natalie Merchant, 10,000 Maniacs, Hey Jack Kerouac, which is part of my my listening pleasure at this point. But anyway, this one is called A Foggy Road, and it was published in the magazine that I now own and edit. And I was very proud to be able to get into that magazine at the time, a few years ago. And it starts with an epigraph by Angela Aurelio Soldi, who I know Glenn knows. I don't know who else knows Elio. And it's something he said as we were walking out of one of Dave Manning's poetry meetings at the Methodist Church in Chapel Hill. And he said, what all humans have in common is what they don't know. Mm. Chinese philosopher Chuang Tzu wondered if his whole life had been nothing but a dream. I met Jack Kerouac, picked him up hitching in the mist of I-40. He said life is Benzedrine and booze, a hot caddy and a cool chick. But if you don't write it down, man, did it happen? One of us got out later. The car kept going. And I thought, I didn't realize this until now, but the song kind of fits in with the comment about the cool chick. But anyway, thank you.
Thank you, Cal. That was, and I'm glad you got to hear the song. I like your poems that are inspired. And again, you know, it's nice to hear what people got inspired by. With the impotence of proofreading, Glenn, that your poem reminded me of, I'm trying to see if I can find a way to share it with y'all. I don't know that this will work. We'll see. And if it does, that's great. If it doesn't, we'll see about that. It's Taylor Malley. Can y'all hear it?
Mm-hmm.
Did you click share sound?
Oh, probably not. How do I do that?
So like if you might have to come back out of this, and then when
Okay.
you click share again,
Okay.
you should see over to the left at the bottom, share my sound or something like that.
I see it. Yes, it's awesome. Let's see if that works, because if it does, then y'all can hear the poem. I won't play the whole thing.
This is called the
Can you hear? Yeah.
impotence of proofreading. Has this ever happened to you? You work very, very hard on a paper for English class and still get a very low grade on it, like a D or even a D equals. And all because you are the liverwurst spoiler in the whale wide word. Yes, proofreading your peppers is a matter of the utmost impotence. Now, this is a problem that affects manly students all over the world. I myself was such a bed spiller once upon a term that my English torturer in my sophomoric year, Mrs. Myth, she said that I was never going to get into a good colleague.
Okay, we'll leave it there. But so you see, he just goes on. There's 3.5 minutes of that, and it's all him having memorized it. So it's just fun. Yes, if you don't write it down. Thank you for that one, to put that in. I need a print copy of that. My students would love it. Is that from you, Scott? Yep.
Scott, if you go to the link that Malika put up, you can see it in print on the screen.
Yeah. I was going to say I put another, because it is like the written copy of that. I think I put the link for that on there. Let me see. There we go. I'll send it to you. It's on his website, Taylor's website, and that way you have the print copy of it, which is funny as well. But so in that link, you'll have it. All right, guys. Such good company today. Thank y'all.
Oh, by the way, I want to
Great
show
way to. Yes, Glenn.
my T-shirt. Make lying wrong again.
Oh my God, we all need that one. And we need a copy of your poem. Be well. Thank you so much, Scott. It's always so good to be in your company.
Bye, everybody.
Bye, grandbaby. We all love Regina's grandbaby. Be well. See y'all next week.